Chapter 2. Plan B worked like a charm. I had an account on an older Ford van in Sheffield, Alabama. It was a skip from up north somewhere. A skip is where the debtor leaves his last known address without any forwarding information given to the finance company. They just disappear. It could be an innocent mistake. It might simply be an oversight on the debtor's part. But accounts like that are always suspect to the lender and the recovery agent. They may well be trying to skip out on paying for the vehicle. To help locate a missing debtor, repo companies will have someone on staff who does skip tracing. A skip tracer is someone whose job it is to go on the internet or using the phone or a combination of both to try and locate the current residence or employment of the debtor. This debtor in Sheffield had moved to Alabama and had conveniently failed to notify the lender back in Illinois of his new address. He had quit making payments months before. All the bank knew was that he'd moved to Alabama. That was it. So they contacted Alabama auto adjusters to try to locate and recover their collateral. Our skip tracers located his residence in Sheffield, Alabama. They faxed the new possible address to me and requested I check it out as soon as I could. I was driving a big red wrecker with a wheel lift at the time. A wheel lift is usually a wrecker with the controls on a cable inside the truck. That meant you didn't have to get out of the truck to pick up a vehicle. Everything was operated hydraulically with the controls inside the truck. You back up to the vehicle, back the wrecker up to the vehicle within 8 or 10 feet, and you lower the boom using the controls inside. You unfold the arms, lower the lift, and to just a few inches off the ground. Then you carefully back up to the vehicle. Once your lift contacts the tires of the vehicle, you hit the switch that secures the tires. The arms swing out, grab the tires. Once that happens, you're almost home free. Shifting into drive, you can lift the vehicle as you're driving out of the driveway, parking lot, or yard. You get a safe distance away from the address and then secure the vehicle with the straps and chains. Off private property is the first goal. One morning, a couple of days after I'd received the account, I was working my West accounts and was in the Sheffield area. It's about 10 in the morning when I drove to the address the skip tracers had provided. It was a nice frame house in an older section of town, and there was a van in the driveway. It was the same year, make, color, model of the van described in the paperwork. It had Illinois plates. I am almost positive that that is the van I'm looking for. But you never take a vehicle without verifying the VIN number. It doesn't matter what you think. All the evidence can point to that being the vehicle. And you're probably right, but don't touch it without verifying the VIN. The van is sitting in the driveway beside the house. It's a rear-wheel drive, so it would be an easy hook and book. The debtor already has one strike against him. From the paperwork the client had provided, it seemed like the debtor had already shown an attitude of dishonesty and disregard for doing the right thing. He had skipped out months before and hadn't tried to make contact with the finance company or paid anything on the vehicle for months. We had had to find him because the debtor seemed to be a bit dishonest. My plan was to grab the van and leave without making contact. At least get it off private property and go from there. I parked my wrecker a few houses down the street and casually walked up the street to the debtor's driveway and to the van, and I checked the VIN number. It was my vehicle. I walked back to my truck, hopped back in, took a deep breath, drove down to the house. I quickly backed up the vehicle while lowering the lift. From inside the house, the debtor either heard my truck or saw me backing up to his van, and before I could grab the wheels, he comes running out and demands to know what I think I'm doing. I explained to him that I represent the bank and that they'd sent me to get the vehicle because he'd not made a payment in months. He starts to argue with me. He don't want me to take the van, but I'm adamant. No, hey, I've got to take the van. I'm sorry, I've got to take the van. Now I'm bluffing. I don't have to take the vehicle, and in reality, really the repossession is legally over because he's objected to it. But again, I'm counting on the fact that he don't know the law. I'm acting as though I have no choice. I have to take the vehicle. I'll even apologize, but I'm got to take it, man. I'm sorry. If I sense the problem, I could always back off, leave the vehicle, and come back later, try to smooth it over. But after arguing back and forth for a few minutes, the debtor seemed to, he seemed to agree. Okay, all right, he's going to let me take the vehicle. He acts all resigned to losing the vehicle, and he asked if he can get his personal property out of the van. I said, sure. I agreed. He said, well, I'm gonna go in and get a box, and I'll come back out and clean the van out. So he goes in to get a box, and then he comes back out and he's cleaning out the van. Well, while the debtor was in the house looking for a box, he also called the police. He comes back out, he starts cleaning out the van, or so it seemed. I'm waiting for him to finish, and soon the police come driving up. They park in front of my truck. One officer walks over to talk to the debtor, and the other comes over to talk to me with the classic line, I can't let you take that vehicle now, right? I said, yes, sir, I understand. The Fair Debt Collections Practices Act says that a self-help recovery must be done without the color of law. That simply means it must not appear that the law enforcement is assisting the recovery in any way, and he can't help. And if he shows up, it's over. It's a self-help recovery, which means just what it says. The lender is free to reclaim and recover their own property, but the police are not allowed to assist in the recovery in any way at that stage of the repossession. Now creditor, and they'll do this, they can go to court and they can get a court order to seize their property, and then with a court order, the law enforcement can help. But it's cheaper and quicker to hire professionals to go and recover the vehicles. If a policeman shows up during the self-help phase, he cannot legally let you take that vehicle because his presence adds the color of law to the repossession, and it's not allowed. Most police officers know that and will not allow a repossession to take place once they arrive on the scene. This attempt at asset recovery is over. Strike two for on the debtor. After talking to the debtor for a minute, the policemen get back in their car. They pull out onto the street and they're waiting. They're waiting in front of the house while I talk to the debtor. The policemen were going to wait to make sure that I left and it was peaceful and everything went well. So once they left, I went to speak to the debtor. Now, I've lost round one. I'm thinking, okay, guy, all right. You acted all cool and resigned that the repo man was going to take your van. You acted like you're going to let me take that van, but you called the police. Now it's my turn to act all cool and resigned. I'm going to act like I lost. I'm going to act like you sure won. You sure pulled one over on that old repo man. I'm going to act like I'm resigned to not getting the van. I'm going to do all I can to diffuse the situation. I'm going to do all I can to make him think that I'm going to forget all about him and his van and go away and he can work things out with the finance company. I want him to relax and enjoy his victory. I want him to let his guard down. I went back to speak to the debtor. I was courteous to him, never mentioned the police coming to stop the repossession. I asked him to get in touch with the finance company with all the fake sincerity I could muster, to get in touch with the lender and get that thing worked out. I gave the impression that I was through with him and his vehicle, and he promised that he would get in touch with the bank, and I left. I left, or at least tried to leave the debtor with the feeling that he'd really outsmarted the repo man and the lender on this one. I drove off, and the policeman left as I left, but I didn't go far. You see, once I knew that repo was over, I'm already trying to figure out how to get that vehicle. I'm already working on plan B. While the policeman was there talking to the debtor, I'm casually looking in my rearview mirror to see what was behind this guy's house. As I went to talk to the debtor, I'm casually looking around. I'm looking for another way to get this van. I've got to try to recover the collateral now, today. Time is no longer on my side. We've tipped our hand to the debtor. He knows we know where he's at, and the debtor knows that we know where he lives. He ain't going to have that van in that driveway tonight. If it is in the driveway tonight, it's going to be blocked in so I can't get it. He might even put it in that small detached garage behind the house, so I got to get it soon. The debtor's house was on a street that angled off to the northwest from Avalon Avenue there in Sheffield. And there was a large open field behind his house with knee-high grass between the house and Avalon Avenue. It looked fairly smooth and clear to me, and I was fixing to find out if it was. After I left, I waited down the street for about 10 minutes. I watched the debtor as he got in his van and pulled it around behind his house and parked it behind his house in the yard close to the back of the house. It's between the house and the garage, and then he goes inside. After a few more minutes, I drove down Avalon Avenue and stopped on the shoulder of the road across the street, across the field from the debtor's house. I took a deep breath and cut across the field. It's now or never. As I said, all of my controls for the lift are on a handheld control box on a long cable inside the truck. And that's going to be a plus with this situation. There's a camera mounted on the back of my record. Whenever you put the truck in reverse, the camera comes on automatically, and your rear view mirror is the screen. So you can really watch the screen and see what's going on in the back. With a little practice, you can watch the screen and control everything from inside the truck. You don't even have to turn around and crane your neck to see behind you to pick up a vehicle. The rear view camera can also be turned on with a separate switch without putting the truck in reverse. That comes in handy if you want to say, maybe if the vehicle you're towing is maybe on fire, but that's another story. So I'm driving through the field. I whipped around. I aimed the rear of the wrecker toward the van. I lowered the lift as I'm backing up until my lift hits the rear tires of the van. I hit the button and grabbed the rear tires, and as I'm lifting the rear tires off the ground, I threw the truck into drive and started back across that field. I'd only gone about a car length when the debtor comes busting out of the house, running out the back door at a run, hollering, "Where do you think you're going?" I said, "Away," and drove off across the field. The debtor never said the magic word stop, nor did he clearly and plainly object to the repo, although I could tell that he wasn't real happy about it. I raced out across the field and turned east on Avalon Avenue, looking for a convenient place to stop and secure the vehicle and call the police. The first thing we do once we repossess a vehicle, you call the police, report it as repossessed, because, if it's in the middle of the night, if a debtor wakes up and his vehicle's missing, he calls it in stolen. You don't want the police looking for a stolen vehicle when you've legally repossessed it. So it's a courtesy to the debtor and the police, but the police need a record of it, in case the debtor tries to report it stolen. There was a church with a nice big parking lot a few blocks away. I pulled in the parking lot to call the police and strapped down the van and fastened on the safety chains and put the lights on. And as soon as I left the house with the van, the debtor jumped into a car and he comes chasing after me. Well, I'm sitting in the church parking lot, and he comes flying into the church parking lot, and he jumps out of his car demanding that I give that van back to him. He's angry. He'd called the police again, and the same two officers came back. This time they came back to the church parking lot. The debtor again tells the policeman to make me put his van down and give it back to him. But this time, the policeman politely tells him no. You see, I've got it off private property now. It's mine now. This time, I let him clean it out. He really does clean the van out. And I asked him to give me the keys to the van so that we didn't have to, call a locksmith and have keys made to do the condition report and everything on the van, and it'd save him some money. But he wouldn't give me the keys. I mean, I've already got the van, and I'm just trying to save him some money, but he was mad, and he would not give me those keys. He's going to make it tough on the finance company, and he ain't giving up those keys. I tried to explain to him that the finance company's going to have keys made. He's going to have to pay for it, but nope.
He wasn't going to pay. He just didn't do it. You know, some people can just be stubborn. But you see, in that situation, I counted on the debtor not knowing the law. And if the debtor, you know, if he knew that the police showed up, that the repossession was over with, which he probably didn't, it just kind of worked out that way. But most of the time, I would count on the debtor not knowing the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act, and usually I could bluff my way through. I've only met one guy that I knew of that he knew the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act, and that's chapter number 3. Okay, let's get this thing turned off here now. And there we go.